So I'm back with part 2 of my pole position playthrough. Here I'm going to take the car around the track for a real race, the Malibu Grand Prix, which is actually fictional in real life, but it's the easiest race in pole position because the races are essentially for different skill levels. And the default number of laps is 4, so that's what we're going to do. And just like in the arcade version of pole position, you have to qualify first. So you have to take the car around for 1 lap, pass all the cars, and you get pole position, or the first position in the grid. This isn't actually as hard as you would expect it to be. At least in the Commodore 64 version, this is one of the easiest wins to get, if that's the best way of putting it. Gives you a 4,000 point bonus. And it's made easier by the fact that you only have to deal with the cars one at a time. And there we are, pole position. There's my 4,000 point bonus. You don't get any bonus for the extra time left over in the qualifying round. That's only for the race. So here's the race, the starting line. They use all 3 reds as well as the green light. And we're off. Now, one of the sort of unrealistic things is that you encounter other cars on the track even though you just were in pole position and you just left the starting line. They're sort of obstacles to be avoided as opposed to actual cars in the field. And that way the qualifying round is much more realistic than the race. You do get points for passing them, though. At the end of the race, your bonus points are awarded on the basis of cars passed and time left over. Cars so much faster than the opponents. Victory is largely down to concentration, I would argue. Just don't crash. Although actually, you don't necessarily know if you won per se. They don't actually give you your final position, which is really unusual. Your points are awarded by your speed, basically. In theory, it's a race against other cars, but in practice, it's a race against the clock. You can also argue that you're winning points for survival because every bit of distance you run, you get points. If I'm not mistaken, you don't get the checkered flag if you're second or below, but I could be wrong about that too. I win so routinely that I've forgotten what it's like to not win. Because when I was young, I played this game so much that basically it became second nature that I would win every single time. It's just not that complicated a game compared to a modern racing simulator, per se. It is a game from a much more primitive era. I'm a little bit skeptical that any car could do the old Fuji circuit in under 50 seconds, though. I don't know about that. But of course, these cars are faster than the real thing, so mathematically, maybe it's possible. I mean, they're not just faster in terms of top speed, but the handling is quite deceptive, because if you try a realistic simulator and try to drive like this, there's no possible way you'll stay on the track. It's one of the things I was disappointed by in Grand Prix circuit, is that I wanted to drive much faster than I could. Because Grand Prix circuit was an overwhelmingly more realistic game. I mean, it was a simulator, essentially. Not a very advanced one, but again, it was developed 5 years after pole position was developed. And if you got it for Commodore 64, you basically were getting one of the top-of-the-line versions of it. Whereas if you got the Commodore 64 version of pole position, you had certain advantages, but the graphics and sound and physics were probably nowhere close to the arcade game. There's a checkered flag. So then I get my passing bonus, as I mentioned earlier. 65 cars, possibly. That's what that means. And 57 seconds left over. Now it looks like I'm going to knock out my high score from earlier today. My last lap was done in 48 seconds, 53 hundredths. Yeah, 48 seconds, 53 hundredths, which is also a pretty good lap time, actually. I'm happy about that. But after this, we'll go on to much more realistic racing simulators. And that's it. Thanks for watching.